Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. This is the presentation. It's a virtual public information meeting for State Project 47122. It's the Route 140 geometry improvements in the towns of Ellington and Tolland. After the formal presentation, there will be a question and answer session. The project email address is listed here on this slide. The project email is dotproject47122@ct.gov. The phone number where the design team can be reached is also listed below the email. It's 860-594-3239. The email or voicemail questions and comments can be submitted through the end of the public comment period, which ends on December 21st. And I just want to note that the phone will not be monitored during the presentation. We ask that you leave a voicemail and responses will be provided during the comment period. Additionally, I'd like to point out the project webpage is also up on the screen. It's portal.ct.gov/DOT Ellington 47-122. This webpage includes general project information, color plan, and information on how to get in contact with the department with any questions or comments that you may have after the conclusion of this meeting. A recording of this presentation will be posted to the webpage and YouTube within a few days following today's meeting. Closed captioning, including non-English translations, will be available at that time. Unfortunately, the YouTube Live is not working tonight, but this meeting will be recorded and posted onto YouTube within the coming days. And the project email and webpage will be provided in the chat shortly. So as I mentioned, after the presentation, there's going to be a formal question and answer session. There's going to be a few ways to communicate with the project team during today's Q&A session. The best method, which is the preferred method, would be to use the Zoom Q&A chat. A moderator is going to post any of the questions or comments in the Q&A, and we will answer any of the questions after the formal presentation. Additionally, you can raise your hand during today's question and answer session, and someone will call on you to ask your question or provide a comment. Again, you may email questions to dotproject47122@ct.gov. And after the meeting, another way to contact the design team is to call the phone number on the screen. And again, I just want to note that the phone number is not going to be monitored during the presentation. And the public comment period runs through December 21st. If you're unable to post questions or comments tonight, they can be submitted to the previously mentioned project email address or phone number, which again is shown on the screen. If you do have a question, please reference project 47122 and leave your contact information so we can get back to you. So moving on to the Title VI, the department, which is our civil rights information. So the department established a demographic survey to solicit feedback on today's meeting. It is optional. We do request you fill it out. Again, it is optional, but it is appreciated. And under Title VI, no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. Additionally, civil rights information is available, and we do have 2 civil rights flyers, both in English and Spanish. A link to both the survey and the civil rights information is available on the project webpage for your convenience, and it will be posted to the chat during this meeting. So here's a brief overview of the contents of this presentation. I'll go over a brief team introduction, project information, go over existing conditions and crash history, the proposed improvements, mention a few design considerations, go over the project schedule, and then we'll have the question and answer session at the end. So now I'd like to introduce the project's design team. The Department of Transportation is represented tonight by Matthew Vale, who's the Principal Engineer of Highway Design, Salvatore Resco, who's the Project Manager, and myself, Melissa Carvalho, the Project Engineer. We're also joined today by Matt Giannakopoulos, the department's rights-of-way coordinator for the project. And with us today as well is Ken Radzawan. He's the Public Works Director for the town of Ellington. And he's now going to say a few words on behalf of the town. Ken, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I just want to thank everyone here on the call for coming to this presentation. Also want to thank the entire DOT team for pulling all of this together. Their work has been tremendous for us in town. We're very lucky to have them. Route 140 is certainly a main corridor for us as a town for everything that we do to get basically from the lake or the Stafford area back down to the center of town. So in our snow operations, this is a very main thoroughfare for us. We're very excited to see some of this work be completed, not only in this project, but in the Burbank intersection project as well. I can't thank this team enough for putting all the attention to detail, all the effort and everything they've done so far. I hope and I ask everybody to, if you have any questions, please ask the team. That's what they're here for. Again, I can't speak highly enough of everyone on this team. So thanks again for coming. And if anybody has anything to ask me personally, please contact me at the office or come on down and talk to me. But again, hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you to Silent, everybody here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken, for saying a few words. With that, I'm going to take us through the project presentation. It looks like I lost. Okay. So I'm going to go over some general project information, a brief history on this project. State Project 47122 originated from State Project 47105, and which is which was a larger corridor improvement project between Route 83 and Route 30 on Route 140, which was suspended in 2001 due to a lack of funding and significant project impacts. In 2010, the department began evaluating locations along the Route 140 corridor for smaller independent projects. And in 2019, 47122 was initiated as a result. So the purpose of this project is to improve the substandard roadway geometry on Route 140 between Laurel Road and T-Berry Ridge Road. And this project is needed to address the multiple sharp curves, including consecutive reverse curves, as well as unsafe sight distances at the intersecting roadways. So this aerial shows the general Ellington and Tolland area. And again, the project's located on Route 140 between Route 83, which is Summers Road, and Route 30, which is Stafford Road in Ellington. And the project location is shown here, circled in yellow. In order to get a better image of the project location, here's a larger view of the project location. It's more specifically the section of Route 140 between Laurel Road and T-Berry Ridge Road. The area outlined in white is the limits of the proposed project, and north points towards 1 o'clock on the aerial view. It includes Route 140, which is Crystal Lake Road, in the area, as well as two local roads in Ellington, which is Pinnacle Road and Hopkins Road. Most of this project falls within the town of Ellington, and a small 600-foot portion near the middle of the project limits extends through Tolland. And Route 140 is considered Bon Air Road in that little section. And the town line is shown here in blue that divides Ellington and Tolland. So now I'm just going to go over the existing conditions of the roadway. This aerial shows the Route 140 within the project limits, and it also shows the intersecting local roads of Pinnacle and Hopkins, which are both stop control at the intersection with Route 140. North is going to point towards 1 o'clock on all the aerials, and a camera icon is going to appear on each slide. So it's going to show the location and the direction of the corresponding images. If you direct your attention to the left of the screen, the camera icon is going to pop up all the way at the left, and it's going to show the view traveling in the eastbound direction on Route 140. So as you can see in the image, Route 140 has many steep roadside embankments that contain vegetation and rock near the edge of road. And this is consistent throughout the project limits as the picture shows. So looking further east, just east of Pinnacle Road and looking in the eastbound direction, this is the view of Route 140, again, with the steep embankments that contain rock and vegetation right off the edge of road. And again, moving further east, so just after Hopkins Road, we have the view of the geometry in this area. So this is the section of the project with the tight horizontal curves and what we call reverse curves or S curves, which are being realigned as part of the proposed project. The curves are sharp and change direction with little or no transition length in this area. Which allows a small amount of time for a driver exiting one curve to turn the steering wheel and prepare to enter the next curve. So drivers have to act quickly in order to navigate the 3 curves. So this is the view looking in the westbound direction. It's looking at the from the other side of the S curves. So this one is showing the large rock slope that's right off the edge of road. The left image shows the spring-summer condition with all the vegetation on the slope further obstructing people's view around the curve. And the right side shows the fall-winter condition. Again, poor sight lines, but this time without the vegetation. And the last image on Route 140 is also looking westbound. This just shows the end of the project limits where we're tying back in. So the next few images are going to show the conditions on Pinnacle Road. So this is the view from Route 140 looking up Pinnacle Road. As you can see, Pinnacle Road is stop controlled at its intersection with Route 140. It has a steep angle and a sharp angle and a steep grade approaching Route 140. And now the view looking right from Pinnacle Road onto Route 140. So this is the view a driver sees when they're sitting at the intersection looking right. And this next slide shows the view of the driver sitting at the intersection looking left. And now I'm going to show you the views. I'm going to show you the views looking up Hopkins Road from Route 140. So this is the view of Hopkins Road looking up from Route 140. It's also stop control at the intersection. And it's an unpaved road. It's very narrow and it has steep slopes and vegetation off the edge of road as well. And now the view looking right, if you're sitting at the Hopkins Road intersection looking right onto 140. And this is the view looking left onto 140 from Hopkins Road. So as a result of these conditions, there were several crashes that occurred along this section of roadway. This slide shows the crash data that was collected from January of 2018 to December of 2021. Within the project limits, we saw a total of 11 crashes with 5 injuries during this time frame. In the legend, there's a summary of each type of the crashes that occurred. The top number in the circle shows the number of crashes, and the bottom number is how many injuries occurred. So there was one front to rear crash that occurred on Pinnacle Road at the stop sign at the intersection with Route 140. At the beginning of the project limits, a tree branch fell on top of a vehicle traveling eastbound on Route 140, and this is considered a moving object crash. The most prevalent type of crash was classified as out of control, where the driver lost control of the vehicle and either crossed the center line or departed the roadway. There were 8 crashes with 4 injuries along Route 140 for this type of crash. And the last type of crash listed is a side swipe, opposite direction. So there was one crash with 1 injury, and it occurred a vehicle traveling westbound in the curve just east of Pinnacle Road, lost control and hit a vehicle traveling eastbound. All except 2 crashes occurred when a vehicle was navigating one of the curves. And again, I just want to point out that the most prevalent type of crash was out of control, where a vehicle was navigating a curve. And I want to note there's no crashes on Hopkins Road. So here's a list of the proposed improvements for the project. As a result of the existing conditions, we're proposing to realign and flatten the curves in the project limits, correct the roadway cross slopes, excavate several embankments, realign Pinnacle Road, relocate utilities, and adjust the drainage and roadside safety systems to accommodate these proposed improvements. There are several factors that influence the design, including steep embankments with rock outcrops, wetlands, and water courses. So these are the proposed improvements. Shown here is an overall color plan of the proposed improvements, with the north pointing to 1 o'clock as well. To the bottom right of the image, we have a legend. The dark gray is going to be our roadway reconstruction. Yellow hatching is going to be a mill and overlay area of the project. Light gray is going to be reconstruction of driveways within the area. The brown is going to be excavation, so any material that we have to take out in order to accommodate these improvements. And the green is going to be an area that we need to fill in to accommodate the improvements. So since this view may appear small, the next few slides are going to break the project up into sections showing the larger views of the proposed work. So this first section is in the Pinnacle Road area up to the Tolland town line. And in this section, we're flattening the curve west of Pinnacle Road. So we're flattening this first curve west of Pinnacle Road. And we're realigning Pinnacle Road at its intersection with Route 140 to create a more traditional T-type intersection. And provide better sight lines. So the realignment is going to cause excavating of a large embankment, and the embankment between Pinnacle Road and Route 140 also has to be cut back in order to provide better sight lines around the curve. It will require a defined sightline easement, and the easement is shown here in red. It will need to be obtained as part of the project. And then the limits of the brown area show the limits of the resulting excavation. Now a red line is going to appear on the screen. This is where I'm going to show you a cross section of what the roadway will look like in that area. And I just want to take a moment to explain a cross section to you. A cross section is similar to taking a slice of bread from a loaf of bread. When you cut into the loaf of bread, you're going to be able to see what it looks like at the line that you cut. So Route 140 is like the loaf of bread, and the red line is going to be the slice of bread that you can look at from the side. So here's the cross section. In the middle of the cross section here, we have the full depth excavation or the full depth reconstruction of Route 140. And to the right, we have the embankment excavation to allow for better sight lines with the limit of the proposed sightline easement shown. The next section is between Pinnacle Road and Hopkins Road. This section of the project runs through the town of Tolland. So in red here is the limits of the next image I'm going to show you. In this area, the roadway is not changing alignment, so the alignment's going to follow the existing center of the roadway. It's not changing since Kimball's Brook is restricting the improvements on both sides. And although we're not changing the alignment, we are still correcting the slopes of the roadway in order to provide a better transition for drivers navigating the curve. And additionally, slight improvements are being made to the Hopkins Road intersection in this area to better tie it into Route 140 and increase the sightline for drivers looking right out of the intersection. Again, like a slice of bread, the red line is going to show us the cross section of the roadway. And in this section, all the way to the left, we have the reconstruction of Hopkins Road within our project limits. All the way to the right, we have the reconstruction of Route 140, and in between, we have the embankment excavation to provide better sight lines. So this next section is going to show the curves east of Hopkins Road. So these are the consecutive reverse curves, or the S curves, that are being realigned to meet standard and provide the required tangent length for proper transition between curves. As mentioned earlier, a straight length of roadway between curves going in opposite directions is needed in order to allow drivers the appropriate amount of time to turn the steering wheel from one direction to the other while traveling. As a result, the proposed design will impact wetlands to the south of the alignment and a rock slope to the north. Additionally, the realignment requires us to extend a cross culvert and acquire drainage right of way and another storm drainage pipe shown in blue that carries an unnamed stream under Route 140 is being replaced with a larger pipe. So it's being increased from a 24-inch pipe to a 36-inch pipe. And again, the red line is going to show that slice of the roadway in this area. So this is showing the excavation of that rock slope. Again, in the middle is the Route 140 reconstruction. It's being shifted slightly to the left for the proposed improvements. And all the way to the left is the limits of our rock cut. And in order to see that better, here's the limits of the rock cut in the area. And this last section is going to show the end of the project limits where the proposed design ties back into the existing. So in this section, the last of the S curves is tying back into the existing roadway. This area is the more residential side of the project, and there's several driveways that are being reconstructed to the slope limits. Now moving on to design consideration used in the development of this project. One of the design considerations used were environmental impacts. So the proposed improvements result in impacts to several wetland areas for the project. The temporary impacts are due to replacing drainage structures, and these areas will be restored at the end of construction. The permanent impacts shown on the right figure, the areas in blue to the south of the roadway, are due to the required realignment of the roadway. So temporary impacts anticipated 2,800 square feet and permanent impacts is anticipated of 6,900 square feet. Another design consideration is utilities within the project limits. It's anticipated the proposed design will require several utility poles with overhead utilities to be relocated. It's anticipated that 15 poles will be relocated as a result of the earth excavation, the cuts and fills of the roadway, and the roadway realignment, with another 6 poles currently being evaluated for relocation. And there are no underground utilities within our project limits. So here's a view of the project plan with the utility poles highlighted in red and yellow. In order to see it a little better, I broke it up into 2 sections. So here's a view of the first half of the project limits between Pinnacle Road and Hopkins Road. The poles outlined in red here are the ones where relocation is anticipated. And on this image, the 2 poles that are being evaluated are on the edge of our slope limits. It's unknown if the regrading of the area will impact these poles or not. And the other poles are being relocated due to the realignment and the excavations throughout the project limits. And the last half of the job, there's 4 utility poles shown in yellow. And again, those are on the cusp of our grading limits of where the slope is changing. And it's unknown at the time if the extent of the regrading is going to cause these poles to be relocated. So moving on to the rights-of-way consideration, our improvements will require 1 full acquisition for the intersection site distance improvements looking right from Hopkins Road. I want to note that this is a land-only acquisition. The project requires a drainage right-of-way to extend a storm drainage pipe under Route 140. 1 defined sightline easement is required to increase intersection site distance looking left from Pinnacle Road. Several slope easements are required to accommodate the project's improvements. Improvements will also require several rights to grade and installing of sedimentation control systems. The next few slides will show the impacts of each of the affected properties. So here are the impacts to the several town of Ellington properties, as well as 23 Bon Air Road near the Pinnacle Road area. North is going to point towards 1 o'clock on all the figures. And the town of Ellington has the 3 properties surrounding this Pinnacle Road. The dark red area is a defined sightline easement located to the west of Pinnacle Road, and it's for the sightlines to improve the sightlines looking left out of Pinnacle Road. Other impacts in this area are all slope easements for the safety of the highway. The impact to Bon Air Road is located to the southeast, so the bottom right of the screen. It's this property right here. And the slope easement on this property is required to cut back the slope containing large rocks sticking out of it. This next area is just west of Hopkins Road, and the property borders both Hopkins Road and Route 140. This is the full acquisition due to a slope impacting a significant portion of the small property. And I want to note, again, it is only a land acquisition. So the rights-of-way impacts for 158 Crystal Lake Road. So 158 Crystal Lake Road is the property south of the roadway. Are resulting from the roadway realignment. And there's also a drainage right-of-way to extend a storm drainage piping in conjunction with the roadway shift. The impacts of 163 and 169 Crystal Lake Road are due to cutting back the large rock slope adjacent to the inside of the curve. And this rock slope is just to the north of the roadway. 163 Crystal Lake Road is this top corner here. And then 169 Crystal Lake Road has this rock cut and this rock cut here. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matt Giannakopoulos, who's our right-of-way coordinator, to discuss our right-of-way policy as it relates to the project.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm Matt Giannakopoulos. I'm a project coordinator with the department's Division of Rights of Way. It is our office's responsibility to acquire all the property rights that are needed for transportation projects. As Melissa just outlined, this project does require the acquisition of property rights. So I'm here tonight to give you just a brief overview of our acquisition process. Before I get into that, though, I just want to elaborate a little bit on what we mean by easements. So when the department acquires an easement, it's acquiring the right to use private property for a specific purpose. So whether most of that in this case is sloping, so cutting or filling, or it could be maintaining a sight line, or for drainage. A drainage right of way is a type of drainage easement. All property rights that are required will be acquired in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes, sections 13A-73 and 13A-98E. And whenever there is federal money used in any phase of a project, the department must adhere to what is known as the Uniform Act. So I'll ask Melissa to switch over to the next slide when she gets a chance. Once the design has progressed to the point where we're ready, we know exactly what property rights we need and we're ready to begin the acquisition process, each affected property owner receives a letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map, which will depict the exact rights to be acquired. And you can see a sample property map on the screen there. At that point, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights, and we use that to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer is sent out to the property owner in writing, and a negotiator from our office will be available to meet with the property owner. They can go into detail the nature of the project, explain the impacts to their particular property, and explain how the state developed the offer. The property owner has at least 30 days to consider the offer and enter into negotiations if they choose. Once an agreement is reached, the DOT prepares all the necessary paperwork to transfer those rights. So they'll prepare a deed and they'll file that and the property map on the town land records. However, if negotiations reach an impasse, in order to keep everything moving, keep the project on schedule, the department may acquire the rights it needs through its power of eminent domain. So what happens in that case is the department files a notice of condemnation in the Superior Court, along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's original offer. The property owner would have 6 months from that date to file for an appeal if they thought the state's offer was inadequate. Now, whether or not the owner chooses to use their right to appeal, that money that was deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the property owner at any time. So I know a lot of people, they hear eminent domain, they think the state can just take their whole property for $1, but that's not the case. All the property owners are entitled to at least that original offer of just compensation, and the state only takes title to the property rights that it needs to allow the project to move forward. I'll be here once Melissa finishes the presentation, answer any questions on that right-of-way process. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn it back to her to conclude the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So continue on with the design considerations. The next design consideration is historical and archaeological resources. Phase 1 survey was completed in August. Phase 1 survey involves a walkover, which is usually a visual evaluation of the site, some background investigations, so searching state and local archives, and subsurface investigation, so taking test bits of the area to determine if further investigation is required, so determine if there's any archaeological or historical resources in the area. And it was determined that no historic properties were affected as a result of this project. So the next design consideration is construction. It's estimated that this will take 2 construction seasons beginning in 2025. So construction season starts in April and extends to the end of November. So this project is expected to be constructed in stages using one-way alternating traffic pattern with temporary signals on Route 140. And then for Pinnacle Road, the need for a closure of Pinnacle Road only during the roadway realignment and during the summer season is being evaluated. If a closure is required, then it's anticipated to last approximately 4 months with a detour similar to the one shown in this figure. So traffic would be detoured to directed to continue on Route 140, turn left onto Route 83, which is Summers Road, turn left onto Cedar Mill Road, and bear left onto Pinnacle Road. It's approximately a 4-minute long detour. The project schedule and cost are shown on the screen. The project's anticipated to be advertised in August of 2024, with construction to start in the spring of 2025. And the approximate construction cost is $6.7 million for this project. So that concludes the presentation portion of this evening. We're now going to be moving on to the question and answer phase of tonight's meeting. There are a couple ways you can submit your questions or comments to the design team tonight. For those of you attending tonight's Zoom live event, you can enter your questions into the Q&A window or raise your hand if you would like to speak. If you called into the meeting with the meeting ID, press *9 to raise your hand and press *9 again to lower your hand once the question has been answered. So questions can also be submitted via the project email, which is dotproject47122@ct.gov. Any questions or comments submitted during the question and answer session, whether via the Zoom Q&A chat or email, will be answered during tonight's meeting. After tonight's meeting, the project team can be reached by the project email or by the phone number listed. And I just want to reiterate that the phone's not being monitored during the Q&A session tonight. So please leave a voicemail, specify project 47122, and leave your contact information so we can get back to you. The comment period is open now through December 21st via email or phone, and the Zoom chat is only available during the live Q&A session. So now I would like to open it up to questions. Okay, so we have a question from Paul. The question is, the plan strikes me as underwhelming, barely changing the alignment of 140 and Pinnacle Road, leaving curves close to the existing locations. Other than sight lines, it leaves Hopkins Road with existing sharp intersection unchanged. If millions are to be spent on this, why isn't this more ambitious and aiming for more complete permanent solution? So when we started this project, we needed to balance the impacts while designing it, and still providing the proper roadway design. So I mentioned a few of those impacts during the presentation. To the south of the roadway, we have a large area of wetlands and Bon Air Lake. That's an environmental resource. And to the north of the project, you have it would have additional property impacts and a significant additional excavation in order to cut back that rock outcropping even more. Okay. Again, you can post questions to the chat or raise your hand. So the next question is, do you anticipate any closures of Route 140 during construction? As of right now, we are planning to construct Route 140 using alternating one-way traffic pattern with a traffic signal, a temporary signal. We do anticipate that there will be work shift closures to install the drainage cross culverts. But that is yet to be determined. Okay, so the next question is, are the construction seasons for this project and the Burbank Road project expected to overlap? The Burbank Road project is expected to start in the spring of 2024, I believe. And this project is going to start in the spring of 2025. The Burbank Road job is expected to take approximately 2 seasons. So in 2025, there may be some overlap between projects. And we will do our best to mitigate any inconveniences as a result. So I just want to say that we can post questions to the Q&A chat. If you would like to speak, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you so you can speak. So the next question is, how long will construction last? Construction is anticipated to last 2 seasons, starting in spring of 2025. So it should last from April to November of 2025, and then again, April to November of 2026.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sal Resco. I'm a project manager in a state highway design unit, and I'm going to help out Melissa to answer some of these questions that we're getting since she's been presenting this entire evening. One of the last questions that just got posted that we're going to be answering is, do you anticipate any change or increase in traffic volume or flow on Pinnacle Road after construction is complete? With this particular project, we don't have a traffic signal that's proposed, so we don't have any traffic volume data that we acquired where we would have ended up forecasting an increase in traffic volume. Generally, when we do that though, we take into account potential future growth in traffic volume and any major traffic generators. In that case, I don't see a huge increase in traffic volume on that roadway. We do understand that it is kind of a connector between Route 140 and I believe it's Siren Mill Road in Ellington, or I forget the name of the other intersecting road with it. We do also understand that the road is used for more than the people on there, so we also wouldn't have any control on mitigating any increase in traffic volume in that sense of it. Our main goal with the project is being able to provide the improved site distance that it has with Route 140, as you can able to see in the photos, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the limited site that it does have. And the next question, who will be held accountable if accident rates do not drop significantly? Unfortunately, I don't have the greatest answer for that because I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd have to get back to you on that to do some research. I will say that department works with Yukon and municipalities, first responders, and making sure crash data is obtained. And the department does end up going back and looking at crash data, especially me personally on projects that we complete. I tend to go back on my own and take a look what crash data is, just to see the impact on what the project had as a whole. So in that sense of it is constantly monitored, and should crashes for some reason not decrease, that would be discussions that I'm sure the town would be reaching out to the department of, if they're constantly responding to crashes. I will say though, in response to even the comment you had previously, the project is able to take the substandard geometry that's there today and provide an improvement that will allow vehicles to maneuver and negotiate the curvature that's there. It's clearly shown by the traffic pattern that it's the curvature that's there is not capable to manage the traffic. And it doesn't allow the proper transitions in between the curves. So although the proposed improvement is not significantly flattening and straightening out the roadway, it is dramatically improving the geometry elements of the roadway. The next question that we have received, what condition will 140 be left during the winter season of 2025? We don't necessarily have the construction staging laid out at this point. We're really a conceptual stage in that aspect of it. What we do is then coordinate with our utility companies internally within the department, which includes other design support units and even our construction personnel. And we really lay out the best scenario for construction staging. What I can offer though, as some basic information, is with an alternating one-way traffic pattern, we are technically limited in length based on roadway volume. And roadway volume is still obtained on a project. It's obtained on a roadway in a sense, not really on a project. So we have traffic data for Route 140. And we use that data to determine essentially the length of what would be allowed to allow that alternating one-way traffic. And in that sense of it, what would end up happening is we'd have concrete barrier that would separate the work zone and the traffic side of the roadway. So typically, if you run into situations where maybe a bridge has been constructed and it's gone through a winter season of construction activities and there's a traffic signal on either side of it, it'd be essentially that for a little bit longer of a segment. And our maintenance staff would still be responsible for plowing the roadway, and they would also be one of the units we coordinate with because they would be concerned on what condition the roadway would be also left in during the winter season. If anyone has any other, we do have one more question. I'm curious to know how many of those crashes also included excessive speed or DUI. We often see people speeding on Route 140 and Pinnacle. Melissa, I'd have to ask you if you have that particular data available with the crashes. I wouldn't know that offhand. I want to say from my memory that there weren't any DUIs, but I don't want to misspeak either. If you by chance have that available, if not, we can go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Within our project limits, I don't believe there was anything recorded of DUIs. I know just outside the project limits, I believe near T-Berry Ridge Road, there was a crash that occurred there as a result of a DUI. As far as speeding, there were a few crashes listed as a result of speeding. again, all this information is taken from police reports, so they used their best judgment to determine what the cause of the crash was. I can pull up the exact number. So for speeding.
While you looked it up, Melissa, I'll answer a couple of the questions that came in,
Okay.
so you don't feel pressured on that either. So the next question we received, will Hopkins Road remain a dirt road or will it be paved? So the portion that we are going to be reconstructing, we will pave. We are not going to go beyond our construction limits. So outside of our construction limits will remain dirt, and whatever we reconstruct will be paved. Next question we received, how are you removing the rock on the S curve? Blasting with a question mark. So the department has a standard specification on rock removal. Blasting is an option. We do not necessarily dictate whether blasting is the appropriate method or not. It is a construction means, and the contractor could use it as a necessary method if they find it beneficial. There could potentially be something that prevents them from using it. We are looking into getting more geotechnical data, some subsurface info on the type of rock and things of that nature that could prevent us from using that as a construction means right now, or a construction method right now. But as of right now, it is a standard construction method that we would allow, but we do not dictate whether they can or cannot use blasting. If blasting was used, I will say that in order for a contractor to use blasting, they need to be licensed. They need to coordinate with the state fire marshal, and there's a whole slew of requirements that they need to follow. But that's again, that's their decision to use it or not, unless something comes up that says we cannot.
So for the crash data question, we have one crash that was confirmed too fast for the conditions, according to the data. And then we have 3 additional ones that were declared unknown, but according to the contributing factors, it could have been speeding related or distracted relating for those other 3 crashes.
Thank you for looking at it, Melissa.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Oh. So there's a question, is there any night work anticipated? Sal, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, we in close proximity to residential areas is where we really try to shy away from using any night work. With a contractor being able to work offline, and when I say offline, they're gonna have a designated work area with traffic separated from them. It usually benefits them to work during the day versus night anyway. Costs a lot more money to work at night. Not only are you paying your staff to overtime to work that night or shift differential potential, you need to run lights, and so you're running generators and things like that. So usually it's not beneficial for them. And because of residential areas, when we're in close proximity, we typically don't allow it. That answer or that concern can certainly be relayed to the rest of the design team and the department as we move forward with progressing the design and developing final plans. And if you guys, anyone feels to speak, you raise your hand to use that function, add a comment in the chat. That phone number that's provided here, that's actually my office number. So if you do leave it and if you do call it, leave a voicemail, again, please specify the project number, and myself or Melissa or someone in the design team will reach back to you. And that project email is also monitored by multiple staff, so your concern will not get, or comment will not get dismissed or lost.
All right, so we'll hang out for a few more minutes to see if any more questions come in. And I just want to note that, I mean, you can post questions in the Q&A chat as you guys have been doing. You can raise your hand. Any questions that you have after today's meeting can be sent to the project email. As Sal mentioned, the phone number is also an option after this meeting, and the comment period is going to be open until December 21st. So if you have anything after today's meeting, just please leave a voicemail, specify project 47122, and leave us your contact information so we can get back to you.
We got one more question. Take this. What's the process now? Is the project approved / proceeding as is? So we do take consideration all comments you receive during the public comment period. A public information is required during a federal requirement, which is the NEPA process. So what we do now is we complete our public info process, our public comment period. We develop the appropriate documents summarizing all of the process that we've taken with developing our design to a milestone that we call design approval. And that's where the design itself is essentially approved to move forward in our final design process. And that's when we start getting involved with utility companies. We get more involved with our design, finalizing it with more detail in drainage, for example. And that includes the culverts, because then we have to start going through the process of developing permit applications. So that's how we'll be moving forward in that sense of it. And a lot of these comments are coming from Paul. Paul, I just want to say, if you feel free to reach out and give me a call if you want to talk specifics on the project. I'm more than happy to sit down with you.
All right. Like I said, the comment period is going to be open until Wednesday, December 21st. You can submit questions through the project email or the phone number on the screen and leave a voicemail. If you do leave a voicemail, please remember to reference project 47-122 in your message and leave your contact information so we can get back to you. Additionally, a recording of this meeting, including the question and answer session, will be posted to the project website if you would like to rewatch the presentation or share it with your friends and neighbors who were unable to attend tonight's event. I just want to thank everyone for joining us this evening for the State Project 47-122 presentation and the question and answer session. Public feedback is a big part of the design process, and the Department of Transportation values your input. Thanks again. And if no one has any questions, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.